There you go. Yeah.
If I find that, I'll buy you one, Rod.
Well, pretty soon the vaccine will be out and then you won't have to worry about it.
It's really hard not to ask him. He's gonna about that.
We need to pass something, get queues or something, so we don't have to.
We could say that there's a rumor that the mayor's gonna make it mandatory.
What are you guessing about? 10%, 20% of the population won't take it?
I've heard a little higher than that. We're having a little trouble with the take rate on your flu vaccines.
Yeah, there's a lot of difference between the potential ramifications, you know, and ramifications between COVID and flu.
About 30 or 40% of them are probably essential that they need, you know, between healthcare workers and the senior citizens. I hope it's as low as 10, 15%, 20. Why don't you take a straw poll and put it in the Star Journal right here, Rob?
Yeah.
He was texting me about 3:30.
I've got 5 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get the meeting started. The Open Meetings Act poster is in the corner over here in the northwest part of the room. We'll start with roll call.
Joel?
Here.
Brad?
Yes.
Skylar?
Here.
Tony is absent.
Pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, start with consent agenda. Any item listed on the consent agenda may, by the request of any single council member, be considered as a separate item under the regular agenda. So I would enter a motion to approve consent agenda.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Motion second. Discussion. Roll call.
Brad?
Yes.
Skylar? Joel?
Okay, I'm going to jump around a little bit here and jump down to the public hearings. Go ahead and open up that public hearing for the Citizens Advisory Review Committee on their 6-month report on LB 840. We will open that at 5:02 is what I got. Go back up to the mayor's report. Basically, we have a few appointments. I'll make a recommendation to appoint Jerry Carr to fill the term of Connie McNally. This term would be ending on August 7th, 2024. It's for the Ainsworth Housing Authority. And also the reappointment of Mary Jo Huey with her term ending August 7th of 2025.
I move to approve Jerry Carr, full term of Connie McNally, ending 8/7/2024, and reappointment of Mary Jo Huey, term ending 8/7/2025 to the Ainsworth Housing Authority.
Second.
Motion second, any other discussion? Roll call.
Skylar?
Aye.
Joel? Brad?
Yes.
Okay.
Good. If there's any comments.
Any comments on the Citizen Advisory Review Committee?
I can discuss the report if you're ready for that.
Perfect.
You guys have it in front of you, I assume. We had a meeting November 19th. All committee members were present except Colleen Lentz was absent. Kristen Olson was there, and Lisa Schrader was also in attendance. We went over our review committee members. They're all active still. Some terms are coming up in 2021. There'll have to be some changes there. Loan committee appointments, we reviewed that. Everybody's still active and their terms are good for another year or two, it looks like. So we went over that. Financial review, Lisa had our financial report. And basically, I assume you guys all have it too. So I won't go over that too much. When we get done, if you have any questions, we can talk about that. Loan review, we reviewed one active loan and verified the loan payments are current, and the city is listed as the first position on the insurance certificate. It's the second review of this loan by the committee, and it is noted in the file that everything is satisfactory. 2 grant applications were also reviewed. One for facade, 10,000 facade improvement for 2020-01, and one for 2019-01, $5,000 for demolition assistance. These grant awards have been drawn down by the applicant. The committee found everything normal there, no problems. There's a bunch of other facade improvement grants that are out there that have not been drawn down yet. So we haven't reviewed any of those because they haven't collected any money yet, but they have 12 months from the time it was approved to use it, so we're just waiting for those people to use those. We talked about some application fee payments being waived, and we checked that against deposit stubs, and everything was found satisfactory there, so. And then Kristen gave us kind of a general program outlook, what kind of activity she's had with in the last 6 months, and kind of keep us up to date on that. There was some topic, we talked about confidentiality of the applicant, and I guess there's been some discussion made as to we may want to change the way we're doing that. The committee will be meeting again in the next month or so, and we'll discuss this and have some recommendations for the city council at a future date regarding this topic. Basically, and I remember when we did it years ago, we made these applications, instead of having a name on them, we put a number on them. We were having trouble, couldn't get anybody to apply. Nobody would want to use this money, so we thought maybe this would help get somebody to use it if they didn't have to put their name on it. There's been some discussion with the attorney that maybe that's not quite kosher, so we might have to change that. So we will look at that in our next, we'll have a meeting here in the next month and see what we want to do there, and have a suggestion for the council, hopefully even by the next council meeting. Otherwise, unless Lisa has anything about the financials, or I see John's here if he wants to add anything to this report, go for it. Any questions? That's all I got.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, go ahead and close that then at 5:07.
I'll make a motion to close public hearing at 5:07.
And to approve the report.
Oh, and to approve the report, sorry. Advisory Committee's 6-month report on LD 840 program.
I'll second that.
Okay, any other discussion? Roll call.
Skylar.
Aye.
Joel.
Aye.
Brad.
Yes.
Alright. I'm gonna jump back up into the mayor's report, and basically, I've got my letter of resignation. As I stated back in May, when I took the position of mayor, I said I would go ahead and fulfill that until my term expired as a council member, which is this month. So like I said, again, I've appreciated working with the council, the city employees, and the community. I can say I've learned a lot since I've been on the city council. And like I said, I'd just like to encourage all community members to continue to support the economic development in our area. So there's my letter of resignation.
And I have something for you as well. I'd just like to appreciate your years of service on the city council and your service as mayor to the community.
Thank
It's been a pleasure working with you.
Thank you.
What's that?
Do we need a motion to accept his resignation?
No.
Oh, we don't. No, I'll make a motion to accept Greg Solz's letter of recommendation for mayor.
Second.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I've heard of the term that you had to twist somebody's arm to become your replacement, but you didn't twist his arm, you twisted his, something else it looks like.
He was blaming that earlier, I believe, on golf or something about you guys that have been taking advantage of him. He will get even.
Now, he's gonna ask you if you take this position willingly, this is your chance to pull.
Roll call.
Joel.
Aye.
Brad.
Yes.
Skylar.
Aye.
It would have been interesting if all 4 councilmen had been here, 2 voted yes and 2 voted no. How would the mayor take that tie?
That's an easy decision. Yep.
Both offices.
You got the old? Okay. John, you want to come up? Joel, stand. Can you stand here? Gentlemen, if you want to raise your right hand, say aye, then your name. I, Joel Warren,
I, Sean Colonel,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution
that I will support and defend the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Nebraska
and the Constitution of the State of Nebraska
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
and that I will bear true faith
and that I will bear true faith
and allegiance to the same,
and allegiance to the same,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or for purpose of evasion,
or for purpose of evasion,
and that I will faithfully
and I will faithfully
and impartially
and impartially
perform the duties of the office of
perform the duties of the office of
mayor, councilperson,
councilperson
according to law
according to law
and to the best of my ability.
and to the best of my ability.
And I do further swear
And I do further swear
that I do not advocate,
that I do not advocate,
nor am I a member of,
nor am I a member of,
any political party
any political party
or organization
or organization
that advocates
that advocates
the overthrow
the overthrow
of the government of the United States
of the government of the United States
or of this state
or of this state
by force or violence.
by force or violence.
And during such time
And during such time
as I am in this position,
as I am in this position,
I will not advocate
I will not advocate
nor become
nor become
a member of any political party
a member of any political party
or organization
or organization
that advocates the overthrow
that advocates the overthrow
of the government of the United States
of the government of the United States
or of this state
or of this state
by force or violence.
by force or violence.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. Joel, this is one you need to sign. And are any of you notaries?
Wendy is.
Huh? So you could notarize that form so you could have that right away, or you could give it back. And then you'll each have to sign this in front of a notary. You'll have to notarize it.
Just for clarification, I'm not on any medication right now, so. You asked about a clear mind.
We'll give you time. Once you get that signed, this will be the next thing. You just have a reading when you sign and set your, keep a record of that.
Sure, that'd be great.
You can just keep it.
You don't remove a person and keep me in line, or this person.
You're fine. You're fine, wherever you'd like to be.
Ready to move on? All right, I think the next order of business is, with the vacancy as the council president, we need to nominate and appoint a new council president.
Who wants it? That's fine, what does the matter thing?
I nominate Brad Gill.
Second.
Have a motion and a second for Brad Fiala. And that requires any discussion, unless you have something you'd like to say. Call the roll.
Skylar?
Aye.
Joel?
Don't
Oh.
vote.
You don't get a vote, I gotta redo my vote.
Aye.
Reason it's early in the agenda. Let me try again. Skylar?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Brad?
Yes.
Motion carried 3-0. Congratulations, Brad. Thank you. All right, next item is to approve appointments for the new term. Dr. Mel Campbell as the municipal physician, Bob Palmer, city attorney, and Taylor, prosecuting attorney. Bruce Coxstein, chief of police, and Lisa Sherrill as city administrator, clerk treasurer. Brett Miller is water sewer superintendent. Kevin Shaw, street foreman, Lloyd Smith, street superintendent. And West Plains Bank, First National Bank, Union Bank. We've asked the public agency investment funds, bank depositories, and English stars and public agencies. You have to handle those one at a time, or can you?
If anybody wants to call one of them out, I think you can do them
in mass if you want to, unless somebody has an objection to it, then they can do them separate.
No, I don't.
I move that we approve appointments for municipal position of Dr. Mel Campbell, Rod Palmer, city attorney, Andy Taylor, prosecuting attorney, Bruce Batstein, chief of police, Lisa Schroedel, city administrator, clerk treasurer, Brad Miller, water sewer superintendent, Kevin Shaw, street foreman, Lloyd Smith, street superintendent, West Plains Bank, First National Bank, Union Bank, Nebraska Public Agency Investment Trust as bank depositories, English Star Journal, and Cape Brown radio station as publication.
Second.
Got a motion and a second, any other discussion? Go ahead and call the roll.
Sean,
Aye.
Brad,
Yes.
Skylar,
Motion carried unanimously. Next, it looks like we need to authorize amendment of the city's bank account signatories to remove Mayor Brent Soul and Mayor Joel Long.
I make a motion to amend the city bank account signatures to remove Mayor Greg Soul and to add Mayor Joel Connor to the signature card.
Motion in a second, any discussion? Call the roll.
Brad,
Yes.
Skylar, Sean,
Aye.
Sure, get that city credit card now. A lot more fun.
Motion carried unanimously. My wife heard that judge on the radio this morning, Mary Joel Long, she laughed. I thought, boy, this is a tough crowd, folks. Anyway, next item is to consider wastewater improvement project bid section C change order number 4, decreasing the contract price in the amount of $5,269. That doesn't sound too controversial.
Going the right direction. Good evening, council. For the new that maybe don't know me, I'm Jess Holbert with Olson Associates. We're doing the engineering on the wastewater treatment project here in town. This should be the last of the change orders. All the work is done in this bid section. It is for a decrease. The items involved in this change order, the decrease comes from the actual rectification of the quantities from the previous change order that we had in installing the sewer line down south. That was estimated quantities. Actually, once we put in the actual quantities, the unit prices went down. But there is actually also a change. It's a net positive change for rerouting some of the force main in Lift Station 4 over here on Pine. The force main was coming out in the same location as where the grinder was coming in, so we had to reroute the force main around a few things to get it piped back in. So that led a little bit of an increase there, but the whole change order is a net decrease of 52, 60. So I guess I don't know if there's any questions on any of that, but if not, we just need to get through that change order, and then that will allow the pay request.
Anybody got any questions or?
I'll make a motion to approve, project bid section C, the change order number 4, decrease of contract price in the amount of $5,269.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Call the roll.
Skylar,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
Brad,
Yes.
Motion carried. And now we can consider the wastewater improvement project bid section application number 3, final in the amount of $147,825.54.
That one hopefully decrease.
Wouldn't that be nice?
The change order you just went through actually reflects on that change, so this is just finaling out what's left of the work that was completed on that project in bid section C. So this is it, that bid section C is essentially complete. We had just a couple items that were floating out there that kept us from putting the final completion letter on the agenda this time. I think Lisa's got that, it'll come to the meeting next month to, I guess, approve the final, so it's necessarily done in the paperwork that's from the agencies. But the actual work outside is completed for that. So I guess you guys can vote on that. I didn't give you really a recap of the whole project, but essentially all the work is done on the project now. It's not uncommon to have some paperwork dragging along with some of the requirements of funding agencies. So we're working through that, and next month we'll final out all the pay apps and everything, all the completion letters and whatnot. So yeah, it's pretty well whipped. Just a little bit of paperwork to complete, and it wasn't going to be ready for this meeting, so it'll be the next one.
Great. So you need to come back next month?
Come back another one.
All right.
This should be it in terms of payment on C. Like, you know, B, we might have a really small amount, like $1,600 coming in, and then on bid section A, which was the water meters, we're gonna have a pretty solid chunk coming in for pay in January.
Right.
But,
But the work on the water meters is done too.
it is done.
Actual work. The contractor lagged a little bit getting some of his pay apps in, so I mean, it's not like substantially above. I mean, it
Now, it falls within the bid price, but
right,
it's
right, they
just,
just hadn't billed for.
I think out of the $550,000 roughly was the bid price. We maybe paid out 100 and some thousand, so there will be a pretty good chunk of change still coming through.
Right.
But the work is done.
Yep, should not see much for contractors or anyone on that job, so I'm sure everybody will be happy to hear that.
All right, anybody have any questions or care to make a motion?
I'll make a motion for bid section C for the payment amount for number 3, final in the amount of $147,825.54 for the wastewater improvement project.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Call the roll.
Sean?
Aye.
Brad?
Yes.
Skylar?
Aye.
Motion carries, unanimous. Thanks, Jess. Look forward to seeing you next month.
Absolutely.
All right, next on the agenda is discuss and consider the agreement for legal services with Secura Law Office LLC and resolution number 20-11 authorizing the mayor to sign the retainer agreement for the LBA Wordy Attorney Services.
So we had contracted Heather about a year ago. So really the change here is just that she's raising her rate a little bit. From what we had been paying her, we had been paying about $165 an hour, so she's raising it about $10 an hour for her time spent. So that would be the amendment that's being proposed, I guess.
And this is just for a 1-year contract, isn't it? Next year to come up again.
Correct.
You know that additional fees.
Yeah.
Seems like her stuff has been very reasonable.
So yeah, she's been good to work with.
Yeah, I think we've all been pretty happy with the
response she's been giving us, what the work she's done for us, it's been pretty reliable. You know, towards the LD 840, she seems to be pretty knowledgeable about it. I think she's been a good part of our LD 840 team to have on board, so. With that, I would make a motion to approve, 1-year contract for legal fees with Seneca Law Office LLC. As a retainer agreement for the LD 840 services.
Let me put the resolution number in.
So resolution number 20-12. Oh, -11, sorry. Got the wrong one.
Second.
Motion and a second, any discussion? Call roll.
Brad,
Yes.
Skylar, Sean.
Yes.
Real quick off the subject just a little bit, Lisa from NCDC meeting last month, did you have a chance to talk to her at all, what we talked about?
I did, I actually sent that question, along with the question from the CARC and the confidentiality, and she did respond back with some information that I forwarded to Kristen. And so
Okay.
I can get to that in my report. We can
Okay,
talk
yeah,
about
perfect,
that
no,
a
that's
little
fine,
bit.
great.
But yeah, we have a little bit of information, I'm not sure that it totally answers the question, but
Okay.
provides some clarification.
All right, item H, now we're gonna discuss and consider resolution number 20-12.
Keep it online.
Design the 2020 year-end certification of the city street superintendent. I think that was in the packet, if you had a chance to look at that.
And this is an annual requirement basically by NDOT. If the city has a street superintendent on payroll or on contract, we get some additional incentive dollars. And we have some, in the past, we had, they were called NDCS report, or NDCS, boards and classifications and standards, reporting that we have to give. It had to do with lane miles and equipment inventory and a whole bunch of other things that we'd certify and send in. Now we don't have to send it in, we just have to retain it in the office. So that's kind of all part, the certification was kind of part of that process that has changed a little bit, but at the end of the day, we still have to send in to NDOT our certification that we have a super so that we can get that incentive payment. It's about $2,000 additional monies that we get each year by doing this. So that's what this is. And Lloyd Smith is our, with Niobrara Valley Consultants, is our, which we just appointed actually under item C. A few minutes ago.
I thought we talked about it in the last month too, but.
We did, yeah, some additional paperwork that was similar.
I'll make a motion to approve, the mayor to sign the 2020 year-end certification of city street superintendent Lloyd Smith, resolution 20-12.
Second.
Moved in second. Any other discussion? Go ahead and call the roll.
Brad,
Yes.
Skylar,
Aye.
Sean,
Yes.
Motion carried, 3-0. On to item I, discuss and consider the recommendations by the LD 840 loan committee. So we have 2 items.
so there's 2 items. The loan committee met last Wednesday and reviewed these 2 items. Both applicants appeared before the loan committee to talk about their project and to answer questions. That first application, 20-16, for facade improvement grant. And of course, it's a 50-50 matching grant. They put in half, we put in half, and they provide those cost estimates to us ahead of time so we can verify the 50%. match, and so that one totaled out the 50% grant portion would be $4,775.12. And the second application there, also similar facade improvement grant. This business is replacing a bunch of windows and painting and things, and so their total project cost exceeded $20,000. So the grant portion could go to the maximum of $10,000. And so the committee is recommending approval of both of these applications.
Okay, and I think we have to act on them one at a time. So,
I've got just a couple thoughts on the first one. I guess I'm trying not to say more than I'm supposed to, but as I understand, there's not currently a business in the building that one references, correct?
So yeah, so one of these buildings is currently vacant, and the purpose of the facade improvement and ultimate remodel, if you will, is to put a business inside. We had contacted Heather, or I guess the loan committee discussed this at length a bit, and basically what we've been advised by Heather previously is that, like in a sole proprietor situation, as long as it's being developed for business use, legally that's considered a sole proprietorship, which is considered a qualifying business under the plan. So, Skylar and I talked about this a little bit earlier today, and one of the things, if that's a concern of the city council, in the grant agreement, that if you decide to award this application, we could always put something in the grant agreement, you know, that would require what the proposal was to the committee, that a business use is going back in there within, I suppose, a certain time frame, and as a caveat to the grant award.
I think that would be wise, it could be abused, I think. I don't suspect it would be, but.
So I would just say, if that is the position of the council, if you make a motion to approve that you might include that
That'd be on there.
to be included.
Yeah, unless there's any thoughts on that. I move to approve, number 20-1-16 facade improvement grant in the amount of $4,775.12, under the condition that we use for business, as intended.
have a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
Any second, any other discussion? We'll call the roll.
Skylar?
Aye.
Sean?
I'm gonna abstain on that one, conflict of interest.
Okay. Brad?
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Sean.
Motion carried, sorry, nodded off there for a second.
Not doing much nodding if you're.
Yeah, well, see, yeah, this thing keeps, you don't know what I'm finding.
Yeah. That's okay. That's,
All right, that brings us to number 2. Any thoughts on that, gentlemen?
And you said the loan committee approved all these, met their requirements and their recommendations, and
they did, and so one of the things, just to bring everybody up to speed, when the CARC was talking about the confidentiality question, you know, that's been raised a few times in the past, and, you know, what should be shared, should not be shared, statutorily what's required, and we've had a lot of conflicting input, I would say, from one attorney to the next, versus what the Department of Economic Development has advised in the past, and so it is a little confusing at best, but the CARC wanted clarification. So we put that question out to Heather, and Heather came back with some additional information, some of which included advisement that what ORD does and what other communities that she works with in her experience and knowledge of the statute is, you know, whatever's put into the agenda packet is public record, which I guess that was education to me. I was not, I would say 100% aware that everything I put in the Google Drive was a matter of public record. So that is a point of clarification now, that whatever's in the council packet is a matter of public record. So she had advised that through the LB 840 program, the reason you have a loan committee is they are specialized skill set, knowledge individuals that are reviewing these applications in depth, and they are reviewing any financial requirements, any program guidelines, and those things. And so they have that information, and they're making that recommendation to you, and that as a council, her advisement was that you kind of need to trust that they're not going to recommend something to you that's not appropriate, that they've done their due diligence. And so that information should not be part of the council packet. That the loan committee has seen it, has reviewed it, and has made the recommendation.
So, honestly, it really makes it hard to vote yes or no on any of these, because, like I say, I have no idea. All I see is $1,000 or $4,000 going out.
Yep.
So you just have to trust your loan committee, and pretty much whatever they say, you know, how could you go against their word because you have nothing to base it on, really?
That's a little bit
Or
true.
how can you go for their word, because you have nothing to base it on?
And that was one
You
of the
have no
reasons.
information.
I have nothing. I just have a dollar amount, that's all. I have no idea where it's going out in town.
That was one of the reasons why, you know, when we got that information back from Heather, I visited with Chris and as the chair of the loan committee, and, you know, this whole thing warrants further discussion from the CARC to come up with a good direction of how to move this forward in a way that makes sense, that is compliant, that, you know, because this scenario doesn't seem ideal either. So the committee's gonna be meeting again to discuss this, to review this, to talk about these things, and then hopefully be able to make some comprehensive recommendations on how we're gonna move forward and be transparent and meet the requirements and make sure everybody's informed, the people who need to be informed.
Would it make sense, and this goes to the committee, I don't know if any committee members are still here, but especially for like facade applications and some of the smaller things, would it make sense to have something on the application that basically is just a check mark if the applicant doesn't mind or doesn't object to the information or the application being made public, where it can be, you know, then you, if you, I would say on, I don't know about all of them, but on a majority, especially these facade applications, your applicant's probably not gonna care if the, you know, if the information is made public. I don't, there may be some that would rather not, and that's, I guess, but it might solve, it won't solve all your problem, but it might be something where there's a simple box on the application that says, do you object to this being made available to the council or to, you know, as a public record?
You know, at the end of the day, you know, from the city's perspective, we just wanna do what's right. You know,
Yes, of course.
statutorily what's right, what's just, what's keeping in confidence with our applicants so that we can have a successful and positive program. So it's kind of finding, I guess, the balance of that, and that's what the CARC is gonna discuss further with the legal information that we have back now from Heather, and how that fits with our policies and what adjustments, if any, need to be made with Kristen's experience with dealing with the applicants and DED's advice that they have given in the past as well. So we know what the problems are. It's just a matter of trying to figure out, you know, how to fix them.
Yeah, you know, coming to the meetings and stuff and seeing an application and the loan committee approves it, to me, that's a good thing. But we're using that money for what it's designed to be used for. We're moving forward. It's supposed to be improving our community, improving our businesses, To me, that's what those dollars are for, so, you know, we can have an application every month, that's actually a good thing, the program's working. But, you know, I don't wanna go like 3, 4 months down the road and say somebody said, that money was, why did you vote for that? That
Yeah.
money wasn't used for what it's supposed to be for you. You know, how would I know if I have a conflict of interest in one of these categories? I mean, I don't, you know.
On the
What
cities-
about putting an address on it? Wouldn't that be helpful to the council? And they have, at least the council would have the address, physical address.
Well, it's so with everybody else, because if it's in the, if
But
it's
you
in the
still
packet.
don't know who owns it for sure. You know, there's no names used, it's just a physical address. Confidentiality.
I still, yeah, I think we're doing the right thing by getting advice by Heather for this, but we're also pursuing it further to see how we can improve it a little bit. I think I think that section needs to be improved. So, at least for me, I feel comfortable voting on, you know, here we're voting on almost $15,000, and I have no idea where the money's going. But
That's your
like I say,
loan committee.
we've got a loan committee, and that's their job, so.
And the other thing, I guess, for the city council, you know, is you guys always have to
Fire the
come
loan.
into the office and look at that information. It might not be.
Well, that's what they're for.
Okay.
But you can certainly, just like you come in and review.
If you read the LBA 40 though, Lisa, if it's presented to the city council, whether in paper form or by word of mouth, it's a matter of public record in the LBA 40. If it's presented,
In the packet, if it's in the meeting packet.
Does it say in the packet, or is it presented to the city council?
I guess
It's a matter of public record.
Heather's information says if it's in the packet, meaning that's part of the formal public meeting. So there's nothing to say, you know, we, even back, way back when, you know, when NCDC was running it, you deliver packets in paper and they'd review them and return them and be shred, you know, and that doesn't make it a matter of public record because as an elected official, your job as a checks and balances is sometimes to have access to information that otherwise isn't out there. I mean,
From the NCDC side, we don't know either, right? As a board member, we don't ever discuss an applicant or anything like that, so it's nothing that we have knowledge of either, so I'm just like you, I see that, it's
It's an uncomfortable feeling, actually.
well, just because you're gonna be held accountable by the public if it is misused, now you trust your loan committee
Right.
to say that, but the public doesn't give you the chance to say, oh, well, that's the loan committee's, fault.
And I don't want to throw them under the bus either, or anything like
Right.
that. I want to
Right.
work, because to make this thing move forward, everybody needs to be on the same page moving forward and trust in each other on the direction we're going.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, you know, the CARC, most of these people on that committee have been on that committee since the inception of the program. So they're very knowledgeable, so that was, you know, that was kind of the point of, hey, we need to meet again and discuss this and come up with which recommendations need to be made, what those are. So-
Like I said, it wouldn't solve all your problems, but it might be on the application, the chance for the applicant to say, yeah, I don't care. You know, maybe some of them will, and then you have a certain criteria for that, but if the others, you know, potentially, you know, I'm of the same, like I said, personally, I don't need to know. I don't need to know as an NCDC board member, but if it's larger expenditures of LBA 40 funds, you want to hope that they're going to, you know, things that are going to help the community, whether it's a loan or whatever it is, and if you guys don't have all that information. But yeah, that's what it comes down to, is it just in your packet, or if you went, if Brad or Skylar or Sean went to an individual loan committee member outside, you know, just outside, said, hey, fill me in on, or to you, Lisa, or to Kristen, they sit in on those, fill me in on what's happening. You guys should be able to do, that's, I think that's what Rod's asking, is can you guys do that on your own with either Lisa or a loan committee member without that providing what Rod calls then,
Skylar calling this afternoon and we visited about that, so yeah.
This is new, because before it was there, and.
I know.
They made it really ahead there, and
It's
kind of studied it, and,
The flip
because
side,
we're the final yes or no. Us four, you can step here, we're the final yes or no on that application, so.
And obviously, when you got that information on some of the previous ones, you didn't, it wasn't a, it wasn't a vote to go along with those recommendations on all of them, I don't believe, like the ones in August maybe, I think there was some discrepancies.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I don't claim to know what the answer is, but
To me, if, if it had been like this the whole last year, 2 years, whatever, there wouldn't have been any discrepancy. We would have just probably voted every single one of them through without even any questions asked.
Yeah, I think.
But yeah, for me being on the council, I need to take it upon myself to get better informed before the meeting. But this is just a kind of a new way we're maybe moving forward to doing it, so I just need to
Well, and it might
move that
even,
forward.
it might even change, pending whatever recommendations from the CARC. I mean, this process might change again in January or February. Like I said, we wanna do what's right, and sometimes doing what's right just takes a little bit more deliberation, and, once we get our pulse on it a little bit, we just got this information from Heather within the last few days. So we haven't had a lot of time to discuss it as a group. So we will be discussing it, and hopefully we'll have a better handle or a better feeling or sense of direction on it next month.
We're still moving forward. Sometimes moving forward isn't always a real straight line, but,
Well, and on the positive side, I mean, Kristen can clarify that we've had 17 applications since August, and over $200,000 going back into our local businesses through this program.
And that's what we want to get to.
and honestly, if you look up and down the highway and on Main Street, like, obviously, we don't know where each of these are, but when you see some of the new, some of the sign work, some of the facade work, some of the, we can see these and just driving down Main Street, we can kind of deduce, oh, hey, this person's doing work, maybe that's, we don't know, obviously, but I mean, you look up and down Main Street, Highway 20, there's a lot of places that are making improvements to make their facade look better, so.
I definitely don't want to deny anybody any money that's going to make improvements to their facilities.
Yeah.
I know.
Now, if they get denied, do they come to the meeting to contest that? Do they come here, or do they go to that board?
They all have the right to come to the loan committee.
Okay.
So,
Because I wouldn't be comfortable with denying somebody of something, not knowing exactly the details, so if we're not giving them a chance, we might not do it.
and those will all be things that we will talk about at the CARC when we discuss all of this, kind of the pros and cons and the navigations of how everybody is informed and how we be transparent and how we meet statute, and, that's the diligence of the CARC as the oversight body.
And when the loan committee's looking at these, they're talking to the business owner. The business owner's in the room. So, if they're got questions, the person applying for the grant is right there, so.
And Sean, it's still completely up to the applicant I'm gonna use Rod as an example, because if it was in the August meeting, he had an application on there. Now, he is the applicant, then discuss that with the council in an open meeting, which he chose to do.
Okay.
But, so they do have that option, I mean, and if they went to the loan committee and it got recommended for denial, they can certainly come to a council meeting, explain and make their pitch to you guys on why the loan committee got it wrong. It's up to that applicant on whether they wanna keep that right to confidentiality. They have that ability to waive that at any time just by appearing.
How does that work if they're denied from the committee, and then we decide we don't agree with it? Then how does that work from there? Do they have to go back to the committee?
what are you gonna base your
We're
decision
the
on?
final say.
Yeah,
We're the final
the
say.
city council can certainly
Okay.
rule, however, and that's one of the things that we'll be talking about at CARC is, how we make sure that everybody's informed and it's transparent.
The other thing too, in this program, I think we look at the history of it, the loan committee's done a good job, because have we had any charge-offs? Have we had any that haven't paid back 100% of what's owed? So I would say the loan committee's done a really good job for this program moving forward, so.
And I can just say from participating I don't vote on the loan committee, but I serve as the ex officio member, so I'm present at their meetings. They do a good job for this body.
I have no doubt.
They
on their
deliberate,
competence.
pretty hard, I guess, and they ask questions and they really look at it, so.
Looks like they got, they got a good group of people there that seems like they take really good interest in what they're doing, so they're knowledgeable about it, so, I have faith in our loan committee. I just felt uncomfortable not being upstairs now.
And of course,
But
the
after
committee's
the
working with
equation,
the information that the manager and the administrator help us, so, you got the manager and the administrator both assisting on the application to make sure it's all there. The two of them both review with the loan committee, so.
I'll have to say on these two here, it's on me not knowing more about these two.
Hey, I got a
John does, man.
I'd like to make a comment. We're talking about this confidentiality in great detail, it appears to me. Obviously we are. And I've got a copy of the LB 840, a guide to program implementation. And I don't know how many people have read it, but you need to read the confidentiality section ASAP. Because that'll tell you a lot. One of the things it says in here, in order to protect the applicants and to encourage a full and frank disclosure of information relevant and necessary for the application, the city may and should take the following steps to ensure the confidentiality of the information it receives. The number one, at the very top, the passage of any resolution or ordinance which makes such information confidential and punishes disclosure. That's a step that the city can. Now, I understand there are public funds, and there's an element that says you need to disclose a certain amount of that stuff. But the confidentiality, I think, is imperative. And this is one thing one way that the city can handle this. And I would encourage, we're going to have a meeting. I would encourage the council to read this. Because that's the law. That's the way LB 840 is supposed to be implemented, as far as confidentiality is concerned. Now, if you want to disclose it, that's fine too. But you don't have to, according to this.
And those will be things I'm sure that the committee will flesh out and come back to the city council with a recommendation, one way or the other, I guess, what they as a body would recommend to the council. And then ultimately, it is up to you guys to decide, as a city council, how we want to do that.
Well, I guess as a member of the CARS committee, we're going to have a meeting and we're going to come back and recommend something. Do you want a plan A and a plan B? One that deals with strict confidentiality and another one that deals with total disclosure? Somewhere in between, or what?
The committee long enough, I want your best plan brought to us, not plan A, plan B,
Well,
plan
but
C, and D.
it may be we want total confidentiality, and then all of a sudden we're back to right what you're talking about.
Well, and that's why when Chris and I visited, we decided it needed a lot more deliberation. It needed to be discussed more, so that we had all the information being taken into account and the pros and the cons and the consequences of what those actions would be and just having a full-fledged discussion about all of those things with people who are involved in the process.
I think we also need to research too, because we may have already passed that resolution, years ago. So, I'm with Lisa. I think we just need to refer to the review committee. I think they've
We
done a
just
very
need a
good
little
job.
more time to look at it. At the end of the day, we just kind of ran out of time before the meeting today. So.
And you look at the grand scheme that we all keep in mind is basically, and I think of it more not for these facade applications, but for an actual business loan or a larger project. You're treating that program similarly to how a bank would operate. You don't know which business goes into a bank to get a loan for something because that information is kept confidential. Yes, different pool of funds, obviously, but that program is similar to how how you run through a bank loan. And so I think that's when you hear all these things. I think that's what they're trying to mimic. Is look, it's confidential when they go to a bank to try to and because they're disclosing their finances, they're disclosing a lot of information. And the other thing is, some of those businesses applying don't simply wanna, if it's a loan. I'll use myself for example. I came in on a project 11 years ago, and we were open session, and it was every question to me on a loan application. So it's really changed over the years since I was in here in front of the council on one from, not the LB 840, but the reuse program at the time when I came back to buy the station. And there was no, this is all, it was all done, public meeting in front of everybody, and yeah, I just sat there and answered questions, but so it really has changed a lot in that time. So I think the committee and people are trying to be cognizant of that, because it also serves as a deterrent to getting applicants if they feel like, as an applicant, their information is gonna be made public, or their application is gonna be made public, or, so I think that's what you're trying to encourage people to utilize the program, as Brad said.
And I'm just,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
totally
no,
fine with doing that, we're doing all of the same.
Yeah.
I'm just saying from last month to this month, it's changed up a little bit. I just felt a little bit uncomfortable because I was more informed, but like I say, I trust the loan committee. 100% I trust them. So if they say yes, they say no, that more than likely, that's the way I'm gonna vote. Because that's what they're there for.
For tonight's agenda, I guess we have 2 items up for consideration. So, I don't want any of the city council to feel uncomfortable with those applications either, knowing that we are in limbo, and like Lisa said, she just received this information. I don't know, number one, I guess you could table those if you don't feel comfortable. But the second part is, I don't know about executive session. Is that an option? I mean, if you want to go in and you have questions about these 2 applications to keep the process moving forward.
No, I'm totally fine with these. Like I say, I'm just questioning it because of it changed from one month to the other on the information that I had in front of me. But, I'm ready to make a motion to approve, number 20-17 facade improvement grant, not to exceed $10,000.
The motion?
That's the motion.
Okay, second.
A motion and a second. Good job, Ed. Any other discussion? Hearing none. Any other discussion? Call the roll.
Skylar.
Aye.
Sean.
Abstain for conflict of interest.
Brad.
Yes.
Motion carried. And I don't want to cut off discussion, but this is obviously something that.
No, yeah,
it's
I-
gonna take more discussion.
I didn't mean to go that long either, so.
And I totally agree with you. It's hard to have a council member vote yes or no when you basically know nothing except a number. That's tough.
Yeah, it is.
We have this.
Well-
We'll work it out. We'll work it out.
Please read this confidentiality section. That'll give you a kind of a
I had to
guideline.
get through it a while, I didn't read word for word a while back, but I'll read it again.
You need, well, you're gonna be voting on it, I mean, at some point in time.
Right.
Not to change topic, but this is a very similar thing to like our housing rehab program, which is CDBG funds as opposed to LBA 40 funds, but still, when it comes to you, it's the same. It's an applicant number, and it's a dollar amount with some loan terms, and that's it. You don't see the person or the address or anything. That's all kept confidential, so I mean, it's sort of similar.
If we're able to come in and look at these before the meeting, the actual application,
Yes.
then I don't see a problem as long as we're all aware that we can stop in and review that before the meeting.
So we'll, at the CARC, I mean, we will consider those things. I will pose that to the committee to how procedurally or policy-wise we can ensure that council members are informed. So, okay.
All right, well, that takes us to item K, city administrator report.
Yeah. Well, the name of the month was really wastewater project. I mean, we spent a lot of time problem solving with some software issues. It seemed like that really consumed kind of the first half of the month of November, but thanks to Wendy for her dedication and technical knowledge and fortitude to figure it out. She did a really good job hanging with it and trying to problem solve, and it was kind of frustrating at best a few days, but we persevered, we got it figured out. So we'll send a silent prayer out for that. We think everything's going to be going smoothly now, and it really is a huge improvement to our utility, this work that was done, and it'll be a super improvement for the next probably 25 to 40 years, and efficiencies and just the capabilities that we now have that we didn't have before in the metering technology, and it helps the community in a lot of ways. We can actually drill down to the detail of being able to contact somebody if they have a leak somewhere, and it sort of brings that to our attention, and we can call them before they get an astronomical bill. And we've already done that on one or two occasions where we've called a homeowner and they're like, oh my goodness, thank you for calling me. I had no idea that you're right, my basement had a leak. So anyway, it is the definite improvement all the way around. So that was the majority of the time. Of course, we're still working on the park and pool study. That should be wrapped up by the end of January. So hopefully at February we'll have some information on that. Jess has already kind of talked about all the rest of the project happening. So January we'll have some more things on there, of course. Once the project is closed out, is when we'll go on that USDA loan. Then they'll basically pay off our construction financing, and we'll draw down on CDBG funding that we received, and then anything left over on the final, however the final payouts come in for bid section A, then we'll draw down on USDA grant funds. So there will be a significant amount of paperwork, I would say, on the city's end yet, even post-January, when we close out that paperwork, just for the funding side of drawing that down and getting that wrapped up. The rest of the month was kind of just riddled with a lot of LD 40 stuff between loan committee and CARC, and just kind of putting together and talking to applicants to get grant agreements signed from prior meetings and that sort of thing. We're still working on the solar project. It's kind of moving at a snail's pace at the moment. We've got we're working on the Pollinator Habitat. We're ordering seed. I think that has to be done in January. So we're trying to, I think with COVID, we're just having a lot of delays getting the agreement with the developer finalized. So that's kind of why everything's dragging. As soon as we can get that done, then the developer can get started. They've already moved in a bunch of their panels to be able to get started. Somebody have any questions for me?
What was the pollinator habitat?
Sure. So on the site, the solar site's going to be just south of the southernmost baseball field, kind of out there by the Cowboy Trail, just east of the county's ground next to the hospital. So these tracker panels, if you're familiar with the solar array,
But so underneath of that, you want to plant that pollinator
it's
habitat?
basically a pollinator habitat. So it's maintenance free, it's eco-friendly, and you don't have to mow it, you don't have to caretake it, and it just kind of takes care of itself.
Okay.
Giant butterfly garden, John.
What's that?
Giant butterfly garden. Biggest one in the county.
Grab your checkbook and hang on.
We've been working with NRCS.
Grab 2 checkbooks and hang on. I just got through with some of that. Astronomically high, 30 or 40 different species, that's...
It's actually part of our developer's responsibility to put that in, so it's no cost to the city.
No cost to the city. Are you gonna bid that project?
We already did. GRNE was selected as the developer. But it's no cost to the city because it's through NPPD's Solar Wise program.
Okay.
So if there's an agreement with NPPD and GRNE as well,
I bid them, and that's, okay.
by adoption.
Any other questions for Lisa?
No, just if you wanted to
Oh, I'm
discuss kind of what
sorry,
we
yeah.
talked about
So
in our last
demolition.
NCDC meeting, you know, you city's got the Board of Health that you're working on with some of these dilapidated properties. The NCDC is willing, if we can make it work, to try to work with these property owners to use demolition funding through LBA 40. Now, in addition to LBA 40, we had some demolition money in the past coming from ABC and from general funds that was turned back. The questions we're discussing is, NCDC as a nonprofit is eligible for some of these potential applications, but the question runs down to, is it a qualifying business because does it derive enough of its funding from a certain type of deal, whether it's housing, you know, do we derive a certain amount of enough of our revenue from the housing program, for instance, to be qualifying as an applicant. So that's what we were trying to get, because otherwise, what we have to do to be able to assist the city get some of these dilapidated properties cleaned up is we have to look at forming some kind of additional corporation, and then we run into who's going to be on this corporation. Is it, you know, how is it different from just our regular nonprofit? Is it a for-profit entity? Who's going to be willing to serve on that? When it's big, it's not going to, you know, for-profit, but it's not going to be for-profit. We're not looking, you know, not going to be looking to turn a profit. We're just trying to clean up properties, help the city out, help these property owners out, get things cleaned up, get them to where they can be developed. So the questions we're trying to get answered is, through Heather, is it possible if we could consider NCDC proper as a qualifying business again to work with these property owners? And it would be the instance we're looking at. So the property owner isn't eligible for the demolition because they're not a business, okay? So then you get a business involved. So the business can't apply because they don't own the property. So it's just, everybody's not able to get it done without some kind of agreement to either transfer property or do, it's just kind of a mess. But if the NCDC can facilitate that, we're more than happy to step in, work with the property owner on acquiring the property, which would make NCDC potentially eligible then as the property owner. Then is the NCDC a qualifying business? Because in the past, a lot of our revenue did derive from housing. If we built and sold a house or cleaned off lots and sold those, with our budget, yeah, it was a good portion of our budget. So I think we can make that argument, but we were trying, with the discussion with Lisa in our NCDC meeting was, can we work with Heather, see if that makes us eligible to the point where we can facilitate these things, get these projects moving, get this demolition done, utilize those funds, and make it work. I think there's another avenue we could look at in that it wasn't just LB 840 funds that were used in the past for demolition. The city used some general funds and some ABC funds through NCDC had applied through ABC and received those funds. Now the general funds and the ABC funds, way fewer restrictions than the LB 840 funding. So could we utilize something like that, maybe work on an ABC application? What we're trying to do is help these homeowners who have dilapidated properties or getting calls for either nuisance abatement or from the Board of Health saying you're gonna get citation if you don't do something. Well, I think they're willing to work with us, but from the NCDC side, we don't wanna be in the property owning business. If we're gonna work with a homeowner, if anything we would do to take possession would be short-term. We either have a neighboring property owner that would want that cleared lot once it's demolished and cleared, we sell it back to the previous property owner after we acquire it. Or as we start looking at some housing funds and some things through the state program, is it a buildable site for us to do, for the NCDC to do a project? So that's what we would be looking at. We don't want to have property to where I'm gonna use that Third and Oak property, for instance, where when it was cleaned up, it was in the NCDC's name, we had to figure out mowing, had to figure out insurance, had to figure out snow removal, and then it was, oh, the city took it over, the city had to figure out snow removal and mowing, none of us want that. But we wanna help these homeowners get these properties removed. It's one of the city's, I know, biggest, it's one of your goals you wanna get done is getting these properties removed, so we wanna help that. We're just trying to figure out through Heather, how does it need to look?
She did provide some information. I don't know, Kristen, you can jump in. I didn't feel like it was a super clear answer by any means. It was kind of a, well, this, but that kind of a scenario. That yes, with the contracts for services, that could be interpreted as a qualifying business then, because you're selling professional services, which is makes you qualifying business because that's a qualifying activity and that's the majority of your income. But on the flip side of the coin, the contracts are still from local subdivisions. So it wasn't a definite no, but it wasn't a definite yes either. And she referred us to talk to Jen McKeon, is that her name? From COZAD, and we did that on Monday, we participated on that as well. And she gave us some information. I don't know that we're a lot farther ahead than we were when we started, but we've got a lot of pieces. It's just figuring out how to make them fit together.
Ultimately from reading Heather's emails and knowing what other communities are doing, NCDC as a nonprofit does probably qualify.
Yeah.
Under the...
As a nonprofit, absolutely. It's
right.
even in our plan that a nonprofit can qualify. It's just where your income comes from.
Right. And then also, is the activity that we would be proposing, is the activity also an eligible activity? Yeah. There's been some changes in the statutes over the years, especially in regards to workforce housing. The city of Ainsworth has changed or amended that plan to include that. And I think we're back to the drawing board of let's go back, let's reread those statutes, let's make sure we understand exactly what those changes meant. Because as we mentioned earlier, every attorney is going to have a different opinion.
Yeah.
We have to decide what the city of Ainsworth feels, number one, is in the community's best interest. Department of Economic Development has always taken that stance that this is city sales tax money. So ultimately it comes down to what is the city, you guys have to determine what are your priorities, what are your needs, and then we have to see, does it actually meet the business activity requirements and does it meet the project requirements? So, I think that's where we're at. It's back to, we just need to keep exploring and come up with the best option that makes the most sense. Obviously, I think, the city and NCDC working together, I think there's a way to still make these projects happen.
Yeah.
It's just that we want to make sure that we're doing it correctly.
I think we can definitely figure it out. I mean, we've got a missing piece or two, in terms of perhaps a contract. NCDC doesn't want to be necessarily the owner of the property, so you're gonna have to have somebody involved that is willing to do the clearing or the demolition, and so, I think it's doable. We've just gotta put our heads together a little bit more.
And I think every property owner may be in a little bit different situation, and maybe NCDC board as well. We haven't had that full conversation, but talking to some of those potential, you've got a list of, I think it was 16 properties. About half of those have contacted us, and they would be willing to turn that property over to us. NCDC's goal, and I'm kind of overstepping a little bit here, so Greg, if I'm incorrect, correct me here. I don't think NCDC's goal is to sit on property long term. I think we can own property, but we don't want to be sitting on vacant lots that are not developable. I can't talk. A lot of these lots are small lots. So I think that's where Greg was coming from, is that, the housing committee in the past, Greg, you've been on there as well. If we had an adjacent property owner that was going to build a structure in its place, then it makes sense. But to just have a grassy area maybe doesn't make sense long term. So making sure that we have a plan that is development or has some business ties. There's actually another couple lots on your nuisance list that we have a proposal from the property owner as well as another individual or group, I guess, business, that they would convert it to commercial use. So there's lots of different options to explore. It's just we need to make sure we're doing it correctly.
as a board, I think what we want to do is maybe have the end game in mind before we agree to acquire. You know, we would, NCDC, once it acquires the property, would handle the contracting for the demolition work, would go through those steps. I think the NCDC would agree to take that on as far as making sure you get your, you know, your asbestos testing, all the things. If we're working with the fire department on a burn, for instance, I think that'd be done under the NCDC's umbrella during the whatever period of time when NCDC would own the property. But after that's done, NCDC wants something in place to where neighbor wants it, person wants it back, it's developable, and we'll look at it as a for spec home or for something. We want some end game in mind because we don't want to sit on an empty lot that we have to figure out how to mow and pay property tax and liability insurance and snow removal. We don't have a budget to do that. So that's where we're at. So, but like I said, and remember this whole conversation, especially like for Sean where you're new, this is only relating to the LB 840 portion of the city's funding pool. If the city council were to say, hey, we want to get moving on this demolition stuff, NCDC maybe submit an application to ABC. All right, ABC gives you guys a recommendation. If you say, hey, yeah, we're going to award $30,000 in ABC funds, then it doesn't have near the restrictions that those LB 840 program dollars do. So that's another way that if you wanted to move on some of these things faster, we can use that avenue if that's a direction the council wants to use. You know, there's some things ABC funds can do that LB 840 can do that ABC can't. So you're a little protective of ABC as well. But I mean, I think there's ways to work through it. So I mean, our goal is to get things done, help the city get rid of these dilapidated properties and make way for development. So.
Well, and another just to piggyback on the concept, the state legislature passed a land banking bill recently that can apply to cities of the second class, which we are. You know, in the past, land banking was really only used in metropolitan cities like Omaha, Lincoln. They've amended that bill now to include cities of the second class. There's some definite stipulations on how we do that. It has to be an interlocal participation, so we'd have to either go in as an interlocal agreement with some other communities, or perhaps, you know, I think CNED is maybe preliminarily talking about trying to offer that through the district. So there's some other options there. Land banking basically is a kind of an interesting concept of taking these old properties and acquiring them and basically doing what we're talking about doing. But so that is something that has come through in the legislature that I'm not real educated on at this point in time. I've got to do some work to review that legislation and understand it a little bit better to know how it can work for our community. But that's another option. So at the NCDC board meeting, you know, we have a lot of tools that we can discuss.
And I think it would help us as an NCDC board, just from, you know, as a council, I mean, obviously you guys through the Board of Health are trying to do something to abate these nuisance properties, these problem properties. Is that something, I mean, I guess you don't have to answer me now, but that's something that you'd be interested in us pursuing, is looking at ABC funding too, to maybe throw an application in and we can work with you guys on that. Like I said, we saw when the city tries to, if the city tries to go through the whole process of Board of Health, it is such a long, drawn-out process. It goes through courts. They have, each property owner has a certain amount of time in every step, and then the city's out a bunch of money if it actually does end up with a property. And then, once you do get it done, it's so onerous to go through, you know, you're going through the declaring it surplus, going through the bid process, doing everything like we saw on that third note property. So, I mean, we're going to discuss this. Our meeting got moved to next week, so this will be, I'm sure, a big topic of our conversation. But if it's something the city wants to move on, we can probably direct Kristen as a board. I mean, it'll take our board discussion, but potentially maybe get an application ready for ABC while we're working out these, you know, potential avenues on LB 840 and some of the other things. NCDC is working on an application it's a state program, Kristen, the
Right.
rural workforce housing. Now, it's a competitive program, but there's funds available that we could potentially get into, getting some state funds that will require a match, that we would then just begin going back in and starting to make some development things happen here for workforce housing. Obviously, one of our big needs on the comprehensive plan, and the state has some funds available, so we're working on an application there too. So we've got a lot of things related to housing that are in the fire. It's just, nothing ever gets done as fast as we maybe would like to get it done, so ABC would be maybe a speedier avenue as far as the demo, if you want us to maybe pursue that, while we work with Lisa and Heather and whoever else Heather recommends to try to get the other piece of it on the LD 40 side in place, so.
Definitely have it to investigate anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
All options open.
right. Because there's 4 properties that could be slated for demolition at any date. I mean, and I guess talking to some of your contractors who, these properties have actually had their asbestos inspections already completed. So work could be done as soon as they have their demolition permit, and some of them actually have demo permits. You know, talking to some of your contractors, Brad, I know I've talked to you in the past about burning some of these, you know, or what's the option for trainings. Winter is obviously the best time, whether it's for a contractor or potentially for the fire department, just from the environmental conditions. So, you know, that's something to keep in mind too. Maybe not for all projects, but you know, you do have 4 that could come down. I mean, lessen your load, I guess, on your nuisance list fairly quickly.
Well, I think a lot of those that we've brought to the attention from the Board of Health have said next spring is when they want to start. So again, we need to get something put in place. Accomplished ones you're talking about, Chris, but also a majority of them are going to start April, May next year. We need to be ready to move forward because otherwise the Board of Health's wasting their time. So we've got to continue to move forward.
Yeah, because I think the city's communicated that to some of these, right, is, hey, work with NCDC, which we're happy to do if we've got the tools to be able to help them, but it's tough when they call us and we're like, oh, well, we don't really have anything in place right now to be able to do that, so I think we'll get there.
Anything else for the good of the cause?
One thing I forgot to mention earlier on a report from a representative from Black Hills Energy, so everybody else is aware of it. Mary had contacted me several times today. The last time I talked to her, she said they had made an attempt to contact 100% of the customers they have in England. Of those, they had 90%, a little over 90% of the people back on. The other 10, or roughly 10% that are not on, she said was because they couldn't contact that individual, or they ran into issues that they found with their system. And she said there's several of them, and they're bringing in special people to basically resolve those issues, to have that completed by the end of this week. And she said if the city had any complaints, they would appreciate a call, forwarding that information on to them, just so the council knows that's where they were at as of 10 o'clock this morning.
After today, people don't want to hear us, the last couple of days, it's been.
Yeah.
They were fortunate. They were fortunate.
Yeah.
Really lucky.
I move that, I'd like to move to go to executive session. Council and former mayor Soul, if you wouldn't mind sticking around for a minute.
For the purpose of?
Contract.
I wouldn't mind talking about 2 half LD 840 grants in executive session.
Will you second to go into executive session? Do we vote on that, or do we just go?
Have a good night, folks.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Hey,
I have a question for you.
you call the roll?
I have Skylar.
Oh, John.
Good. I do a new one with people in Omaha.
Okay.